These are the craziest no-German plans. The Germanian world capital, I know I'm saying it a little bit differently there. Bro, nobody had more insane plans than the Germans from World War II. I'm actually kind of scared to watch this video, to be honest.
Germania world capital. Despite his dislike of Berlin, seeing it as too modern and Jewish, Hitler planned to turn it into Germania, the Nazi world capital post-World War II victory.
I'm pretty sure there's a lot of German alternative history where Germany wins World War II that talk about this. The massive buildings and, what they would have done with this basically world capital.
Albert Speer, his chief architect, led the 20-year 500 million Reichsmark project to demolish central Berlin, relocating residents to homes of deported Jews. The core of Germania was a new city layout defined by two intersecting boulevards, forming a huge cross over the city. The north-south axis would stretch 5 kilometers, serving as a grand parade route with traffic diverted into an underground highway.
I mean, they're a massive militaristic state. Of course, they're going to have massive military parades when they control the world for whatever reason.
At the heart of Germania would be the Großer Platz, 350,000 square meters in size. It was to be flanked by the Führer's Palace, the Reichstag, the new Reich Chancellery and the Army High Command.
Wow.
In the north end would be the Volkshalle, the People's Hall, designed by Hitler and planned to be...
I gotta admit, these grand architectural plans starting to sound a whole lot like a lot of communist regimes, and we know the Mustache Man didn't like a lot of those.
The largest enclosed building ever constructed. Over 200 meters tall and 250 meters wide, seating 120,000 people.
Bro, that's what I'm saying. This is like some communist stuff right here. There's way too many similarities. Maybe they don't have the communist architecture feel, but just the grandness of it all.
Assembly Square in front of it would dwarf St. Peter's Square in Rome. An arc based on Paris's Arc de Triomphe, scaled up to nearly 100 meters tall, was planned in the south of the boulevard.
Humans are so funny, bro. We don't come up with a better structure. We just see something and be like, yeah, what if we just made that, but way bigger?
Germania's massive scale was meant to awe supporters and intimidate enemies by making them feel small and powerless.
Of course.
The Nazis tested Berlin soil with a 12,600-ton concrete cylinder, the Schwerbelastungskörper, built by...
What was that? Come again? The Schwerbelastungskörper.
12,600-ton concrete cylinder, the Schwerbelastungskörper.
I love the German language. What's the ambulance called again? Krankenwagen. I don't even need to look that one up. I remembered that one.
By French forced labor, still standing today. Swedish granite was imported, but Germania remained a fantasy with almost nothing built.
Bro, that's number one. That's literally just the start of this whole video. Keep in mind, the Germans from World War II, they are around for 12 years. Since 1933, they were in power. You could even say, they were around before that. They just didn't take power. So they had a lot of time to be thinking about all of this. Now, I'm sure their ideas and their plans got even crazier and crazier into the 1940s, but especially when in 1941, when they had controlled essentially all of continental Europe, that's when they probably came up with the most radical plans.
The Greater Germanic Reich was the name of the vast empire Nazi Germany
aimed. I like the strange country humans we have in this video. Never seen, country humans. I wasn't expecting to see country humans, but here we are.
Aimed to establish across Europe. It was part of Hitler's New Order, reshaping Europe into a racially German-dominated continent. This excluded the Soviet Union, which the Nazis saw as Judeo-Bolshevist, culturally non-European and criminal. The plan envisioned direct annexation of territories like Austria, Bohemia, Western Poland, and many others into an enlarged German state.
They did do that, did they not? Are we going to continue to... are they just going to continue down that path?
Areas would be absorbed fully, while surrounding regions would become satellite states.
This is how they administer it, I guess, after World War II. This is their administration of the whole thing, I see.
Spain, Portugal, and Italy were expected to fall under total German control.
It's funny how, oh man, the philosophy of it all just is, I don't know. It's just kind of strange, the Slavs, Jews, nah. They're no good. We actually have to exterminate those. But, you know, the French, the Italians, the Spanish, they might even be cool with the British. But the other ones, as long as they bow down, it's fine. Also, because Japan helped us, they're honorary Aryan. Like, the philosophy is so wonky.
The western frontier aimed to restore borders from the Holy Roman Empire, bringing in all of Wallonia, French-speaking Switzerland, and much of northern and eastern France.
Bro is reaching way back in time, like even for the 1940s or 30s. I mean, the Holy Roman Empire hadn't existed since Napoleon destroyed that. Like, I mean, I guess you could do that, but dang.
Britain rather.
To be fair, you know what? The Italians at this very same time period were trying to revive the Roman Empire, like to the point where their borders were as big as they were, like almost 2,000 years before World War II. So it's kind of crazy. I guess I get it, Germany.
Then being annexed.
I don't want to say I get it to those Germans. That sounds really bad. I don't get it. Never mind. I don't get it, Germany.
Was seen as a potential naval ally of the Reich. British men would have been used as industrial slave labor. British women were to be impregnated by German soldiers to Germanize Britain. The Channel Islands were to become...
Specifically the Brits. That's funny. I mean, were they only going to do that with the Brits? Were they not going to do that with the Italians or the Spanish or anything like that? It does make sense. I mean, remember at this time, the Brits had been the #1 naval power for literal centuries. So if I'm the Germans and I control the world, then I am going to make this just a giant naval country base. Like, the entire country is about to be my naval base. So I guess I get it.
I'm part of the empire.
Didn't the Germans already Germanize the hell out of the people that came from the British Isles, though? We're just going to keep doing that?
Repurposed into strength through joy vacation resorts. Ireland...
Strength through joy. Oh, man. The vacation resorts, though, everyone needs them. Every little, not even little, every empire, even if they are little, needs their own vacation resort. But the Channel Islands, of all places... You're not going to take one of, like, the French overseas territories that are, like, far away from Europe? Okay.
Once occupied, would be unified and governed together with Britain. But the Nazis' regime's expansionist focus was on the east. The idea of Lebensraum aimed to colonize...
Yes, living space. I think their plan here was literally to just get rid of all these people. Like, we're not even going to impregnate you. We're just going to get rid of you.
Vast areas of Eastern Europe, pushing Germany's reach to the Ural Mountains. Under Generalplan...
Well, maybe... Man, I don't even want to say that. Maybe we'll... Never mind.
Ost. This expansion would involve continued mass extermination and ethnic cleansing, removing Slavs, Jews, Roma, and others considered inferior to make way for German settlers.
Remember, too, this is a forgotten part about the whole thing. Bro, if you look back at the German ethnic groups back in, like, 1914, there were a lot of Germans that did live out here. They were very sprinkled. I mean... A lot of it goes back to the old Imperial German days, you know, before they lost a lot of those borders after World War I. But there were a lot of German speakers and German people out here in the East.
The surplus Russian population west of the Urals would be deported into Siberia. Estonians, Latvians, and Lithuanians were marked for future assimilation through Germanization.
So again, yeah, kind of some, again, a lot of communist strategies. Sending people to Siberia. What is this? There's just too many similarities. Okay, well, that's crazy plan number 2. Let's see what crazy plan number 3 is all about.
Reichspurbahn was a massive broad-gauge railway project planned by...
I just realized we're going to definitely talk about the plan to dam the Mediterranean, I'm assuming.
Nazi Germany to connect the cities of the Greater Germanic Reich and beyond. Conceived by Hitler himself, the train was meant to be central to his vision of global domination.
Funny enough, Europe did heavily rely on trains without the Mustache Man. So I think that, yeah, Europe still became heavily reliant on rail, that's for sure.
Maritime shipping with high-speed continent-spanning rail. The Breitspurbahn was designed with a 4-meter gauge, over twice the regular width. The project was prioritized in 1941 and granted 84,000 tons of steel, despite shortage. The passenger trains were to be...
I mean, this really just comes down to, like, the natural layout of the European continent. Like, it just makes sense to build rail there. Then again, makes sense to build rail in the United States, yet we're not doing any of that.
A massive 6 meters wide and 7 meters tall, fully stacked with chandeliers, restaurants, a cinema,
Holy
a
crap.
glazed viewing platform, a car with 4 bathtubs and 20 showers,
I'm pretty sure we saw this on Man in the High Castle, right? I'm pretty sure this was basically something, or was that Wolfenstein? I don't know. But these plans are definitely used a lot when talking about alt history scenarios where the Germans win World War II.
saloons, and even a pastry shop. One key goal was a fast connection between Upper Silesia and the Donetsk Basin. Routes were planned from
Why?
Berlin to Moscow, the Mediterranean to Munich, and deep into Eurasia.
Dang. I mean, I guess I don't need to say why. I mean, that's their territory. They're cleaning it up, too. They're doing whatever they were trying to do to that region. So I guess they really wanted to make sure. Oh, it's probably to get Germans out there, too. They wanted to get more German people. You know what's funny? You know what I was thinking about the other day? Like, unfortunately, I don't think... Well, he could have never predicted this, but the Austrian painter, like, let's say he does win, birth rates begin to plummet since the conception of the anti-baby pillen. That's literally the German word for contraceptive pill, basically. There we go. I'm using my German a little bit. So let's just say in a crazy universe where he does win and he does get rid of all the Slavs and anyone else that he deems not German enough, bro, the German population was not even going to be able to fill all this stuff out. Assuming, now maybe he just would have banned the birth control pills, essentially. But it'd be kind of crazy if what happened in our world also happened in this alternative universe where people just kind of generally stop having kids. And you just cannot bring the Germans to expand and fill out all this land.
The trains were also designed for military use, with ammunition storage, space for tanks and troops, and even an anti-aircraft installation hidden under a dome. Ultimately,
Why? I mean, they already control the world at that point. What plan were they worried about? Who exactly were they worried about at this point? I'm guessing maybe the Americans. I think even the Germans, even though they had crazy plans at this time, they probably thought they weren't going to be able to eliminate the U.S. And then maybe they could have been worried about their former Japanese ally in this universe turning on them and eventually attacking them somewhere in Siberia.
no Breitspurbahn trains were ever built. Some design documents ended up in the Soviet Union.
Of course.
The U.S. invasion.
Again, some of these plans, it's just kind of funny because some of them kind of became, I mean, the rail all across Europe kind of became a thing. But yeah, I mean, we figured out all these plans and all these crazy German scientists. We got in. Whether it was the Soviet side or the Allies, the U.S. and the Brits and the French forces, we were able to figure out all these different plans after the fall of the Germans in 1945.
Hitler saw war with the US as inevitable, envying its size and resources while fearing its power.
Yeah.
Conquering Europe was his stepping stone to challenging America.
It's perfect that we're talking about this. I literally just made a mention of it. So I think that even Adolf knew he's not going to be able to get to North America. Like, it's going to be a monumental task to actually take over the U.S. I mean, it's literally an ocean away. It's an ocean away.
Operation Pastorius was an early attempt to sabotage American infrastructure by infiltrating trained agents into the US.
Oh, I heard about this. Yeah, they sucked. These espionage during World War II, terrible. We really got to master espionage during the Cold War, obviously. The US and the USSR both mastered it. But during these days, I mean, dang, the Germans did not. We found them out so fast. Let's see.
But the plan collapsed when Georg Johann Dasch, one of the German saboteurs, defected and alerted the FBI. The long-term invasion plan required a massive expansion of the...
There was other things I think I read about that the Germans were just obviously German. I thought I had read that, like, they just walked in with their German accent. And it was really suspicious.
Kriegsmarine. After expected victories over Britain and the USSR, Hitler intended to build a navy capable of transporting millions of German troops across the Atlantic.
That's
Two
crazy.
invasion routes were considered. A German-Japanese pincer attack via Alaska.
This really feels like one of those plans. Now, I might be wrong about this one. This really feels like one of those plans when Adolf began to kind of lose his mind there at the end. Like, this just seems crazy. especially at the end. You could tell that, his mind started to deteriorate by the end when it was very obvious the Reich was going to fall. I don't think he would have came up with his plan in like the 30s, for instance.
And coastal cities, or an assault from North Africa to New Orleans,
That's crazy.
using the Mississippi River to strike inland.
That's so funny.
The Germans also planned to occupy the Azores, the Canary Islands,
Okay.
and others to gain Atlantic bases.
That makes sense. Maybe Bermuda, if you took over the British, then maybe you go after Bermuda there. But I don't know, man. I mean, if I'm the Germans in this world, I feel like I just try to I try to attack like Canada or Mexico, and then get a foothold from there.
The America Bomber project aimed to develop long-range bombers capable of reaching the American mainland.
I mean, in this world, we can probably safely assume that, let's say, like, the Soviet Union does destroy the British Empire, they take over the British Isles, they take out the USSR, then technologically speaking, the same things kind of happen. Then it's just a world where the Germans are now the Soviet Union. And technologically wise, things probably continue to evolve. I think the Germans probably get the nuke first. They probably get some technologies a little bit earlier or faster because those German scientists were pretty wild. But yeah, they probably would have been able to eventually get access to this.
Ultimately, Hitler envisioned Britain, once defeated, joining Germany in a final war against America. Hitler envisioned a post-war occupation of the United States to use it as a breeding ground. He viewed America as rich in Aryan blood due to European immigration and admired its restrictive immigration policies.
And remember, yeah, at those times they were, but remember the U.S. had already before that, in the 1940s, a ton of Germans. I mean, we still have Germans to this day. In certain states, yeah, I mean, it's probably, if you break down like white Americans, they're either British or German.
Under Nazi control, the US would be stripped of racially inferior populations and transformed into a racially pure extension of Nazi ideology.
Oof.
The Arctic Empire. In 1938, Nazi Germany launched an Antarctic expedition and claimed part of Queen Maud Land as Neuschwabenland.
I actually didn't know that.
The goal was to establish a long-term German colony. The short-term goal was extracting whale oil to cut reliance on imports, but the real aim was propaganda, flaunting Germany as a global power. Plans for further expeditions to the Pacific side of Antarctica were also considered, but the outbreak of World War II halted all activity. The Nazis also had plans to build a new city in Norway called Nordstern.
Isn't this where they, I mean, I don't know, maybe we're going to get into it, but didn't they go down there to find like the Holy Grail and all this stuff? All the old artifacts and things like that? I mean, maybe this was initially, but maybe some other dudes went down there to find some special stuff.
Trondheim. It was to serve as a naval hub, cultural center, and symbol of German dominance in the north. The city was intended to house 300,000 Germans and feature a museum of German art,
Wow.
a Grand War cemetery, and a towering memorial. Nazi mythology tied it to Aryan origins, with plans for lavish cultural festivals celebrating Germanic gods.
Okay, now we're getting to get into it. Some of the more like mythological stuff that the Germans were thinking about back in those days.
Nordstern was supported by top naval commanders Erich Raeder and Karl Dönitz, due to its strategic position offering control over the North Atlantic.
And then in the future, again, if we're going to assume that the Germans essentially have control over all of Europe as we head on into the 1950s and the 1960s, maybe eventually we begin to see the effects of global warming, and we see all, the ice caps begin to melt and things like that. I mean, I don't know. In a world where the Germans take over all of Europe, do we see increases in climate change? Does climate change get even worse, possibly? If they're making these giant projects, these giant architectural buildings, and they have plans to build rail everywhere, like, is it crazy to think that maybe climate change is affected even more by the German Empire and what they end up doing in Europe?
Hitler described it as a German Singapore. An
That's funny.
autobahn was planned.
That is an interesting one, just because Singapore was not an independent nation yet. Obviously, Singapore was a part of British Malaysia at the time, and it was still held a lot of power. I mean, Singapore, it's just geographical location, was going to be powerful no matter what. Something about like the most sea trade goes through Singapore in the world. So I guess it's not super shocked because it is a geographical advantage that Singapore has, even in the 40s. But interesting that he referenced Singapore there, and that Singapore still to this day continues to dominate, even though it's a tiny city-state.
Connected directly to Germany, running through Denmark, Sweden and Norway. The city was key to Germany's expanded Atlantic wall strategy, with Nordstern envisioned as a launching point for both defensive and offensive operations across the Atlantic.
So this is really before they ideally take down London. This is still when they're trying to defeat the British,
including against the United States.
Yes, but you can eventually still use that, against the US.
The global new order.
That's kind of the smart thing about the wall in a way, because obviously they started building that massive North Atlantic wall because they knew D-Day was coming. That was like inevitable. They knew there would be a massive invasion, but it didn't have to necessarily be from the British. You can destroy the British, you can capture London, and that wall's still going to be useful because it's obvious that the US is going to stand around, they're going to be around for at least years, if not centuries, if not decades. I think they would have assumed that after 100 years, they would have eventually been able to take out the U.S. But that wall was going to be useful against the U.S. too.
Nazi Germany and
in the eyes of the Germans that win, World War II and the whole continent.
Fascist Italy planned to establish political and economic dominance in regions outside Europe, turning them into ideological and resource satellites of the Axis. Africa was to be
the funny Axis flag, that rare
political and economic
rare
dominance
Axis
in
flag.
regions
I've seen that flag a
outside
couple
Europe,
times.
turning them into ideological and resource satellites of the Axis.
I gotta say, I don't think this is the flag they would be flying, but it's a nice rare flag.
Africa was to be split up. Northern Africa under Italian control,
because again, the Italians wanted to recreate the Roman Empire, so yeah, just give them all that.
Central Africa.
I mean, it makes sense for them to get all that too. I mean, the Italian peninsula is right there next to, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, and most of the livable areas are along the coast, along the Mediterranean. So yeah, just give them all that.
Under German rule in southern Africa.
Keep in mind, the Germans had already controlled a lot of these portions in Africa before the end of World War I. Remember, they were a part of the whole Berlin Conference. It was literally called the Berlin Conference, where they carved up Africa. The Germans only lost huge territories in Africa because they were forced to give it up, forced to cede it after World War I, after they lost it.
Under a pro-Nazi Afrikaner regime. In Asia and the Pacific, German communities across China, Japan, Australia, India and the Dutch East Indies were to be used to advance anti-communist sentiment and undermine Allied authority.
Interesting map there to specifically choose that area. I can see China. Now, I don't know if Adolf could have predicted China falling to communism literally in 1949. I don't think he was really worried about it that much. I mean, maybe he gave it a thought or two in 1944, but by 1945, he was just concerned about his own safety, and he was probably also losing his mind. But yeah, anti-communist movements in India, China, Japan, Indonesia, and Australia randomly
were to be used to advance.
Maybe, did he have data back then? Was there like newspapers showing that there was like popular support for that ideology specifically in these countries?
Anti-communist sentiment and undermine Allied authority. In Tibet, they planned to start an anti-British rebellion to undermine Allied influence. Germany
Anti-British rebellion in Tibet. Interesting.
Also retained claims to its pre-World War I Pacific colonies, such as New Guinea and Samoa, considering selling them to...
I literally mentioned the pre-World War I German colonies, but yeah, they did also have some of this stuff too.
Japan. Hitler believed that...
Yes, because Japan was rewarded heavily they took all of the German Pacific colonies after World War I. Remember that they were technically at war in World War I. People forget about that. They were on the same side in World War II, though.
Australia and New Zealand would be colonized by Japanese settlers in the future.
Oh, those poor Australians. I would not envy that. That is not good. The Japanese Empire? No, thank you. I don't know. I don't know what... In a world where the Axis win World War II, I don't even want to think about what the Japanese would have done over there on their side. I mean, it was already horrific during the actual conflict of World War II. But after that, what would they do to the Aussies and Kiwis? I don't know.
In Palestine, they had plans to establish a puppet Arab regime hostile to Zionism.
They were going... I mean, I don't know if he's going to get into it, but he was going to put Jews apparently in Madagascar but maybe that was one of his early plans. By this point, maybe he would have come up with something else.
A broader vision for the region included a greater Arab Union aligned with Nazi Germany, with Saudi Arabia treated as an ally.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Iran, considered racially Aryan and thus immune to Nazi racial laws.
Yes, there's a lot of people still to this day, Iranians that say that they are Aryan. It's just funny. I didn't know that Adolf agrees with that.
Germany planned to trigger an anti-Allied revolt and turn the country.
It really just feels like, honestly, like as long as you were not white and Slavic, then you're fine. I mean, dang, you could be Japanese and you're Aryan. He just had a really big problem with obviously the Jews and the white Slavs. But everyone else, yeah, whatever, you're Aryan.
Into a major Axis partner. Afghanistan was to be transformed into a client state under Amanullah Khan, serving as a forward base against British influence. Central Asia and India were marked for ideological colonization with...
This is fascinating stuff. Like dividing up, like being inside of Adolf's mind here and dividing up the world, and how you kind of get to see how he saw the world at that time and what he intended to do with it. It's really interesting.
Client state under Amanullah Khan, serving as a forward base against British influence. Central Asia and India were marked for ideological colonization with...
Ideological colonization. Obviously, Central Asia was already under the Russian Empire and the Soviet Union at that time.
Turkic,
but they, were vastly different ethnic groups.
Populations targeted for military recruitment.
Yeah, the Turkic population.
And Germanization. The whole subcontinent.
How do you Germanize them, though? I mean, I guess you just spread your culture over there, but I don't know how. I just the idea that you're going to make the whole world German. How are you going to do that exactly? That's a lot of crazy stuff that's going to happen. But you know what? Don't put it past the World War II Germans.
The continent would be divided. Germany controlling the western part, modern-day Pakistan, and Japan annexing the rest.
Interesting. And they didn't know that at the time, this being... Because again, the partition of India wouldn't happen until, Hitler was already in the ground. But... interesting that Pakistan would just be the German side, and then India, the rest of India, modern-day India, would just be Japanese. Some anime for you guys, I guess?
Controlling the western part, modern-day Pakistan, and anime Japan Bollywood. Annexing the rest. In the Americas, Germany and Japan aimed to challenge US dominance. Japan planned to seize the Panama Canal and convert Central America into a colonial hub under Tokyo's command.
I could see that. Remember, there was also a lot of Japanese citizens in Brazil, specifically in Brazil, but they had migrated over to South America in the 1800s.
The Nazis sought to dominate South America economically, using German expatriates, Lutheran networks, and local fascist groups.
Well, funny enough, they do still dominate Chile to this day, at least in terms of military helmets. Look up Chile military helmets, just Chile military gear. It's very heavily influenced by the Germans.
The short-term focus was on Nazifying German communities and creating espionage.
Also, yes, there's a lot of German population, German ethnic groups as well in Brazil, in Argentina. A lot of, actually, I mean, Argentina is pretty much just the indigenous people, the Germans, and the Italians that came over there, and some Spanish.
Networks. Long-term goals included political penetration through coups and separatist projects. Schemes like...
Some of this sounds like, I know it's crazy, but some of this sounds like the way the Spanish Empire back during, I think, the 17th century planned to take over all of, was that Ming China? They were going to take over Ming China by, like, integrating with the royal family and just diluting the bloodline until they slowly asked for more and more chunks, and they did it all just to be able to cuck the Ottomans.
The Fuhrmann-Plan and Guyana-Projekt envisioned Axis-aligned mini-states. Hitler also expressed a desire to found a new Germany in Brazil, expanding into surrounding countries through German-speaking settler communities.
Why did I know that? I don't know how I knew about that. The idea of a new Germany inside of Brazil. You know what's crazy, too? There's a lot of, after the Civil War, there was a lot of Confederate Americans that went down and moved to Brazil. There's still a town there somewhere where they celebrate their heritage. kind of funny to think what would happen to those people in a world where they're now new Germans. Seems fitting, I feel like, for him.
Communities and fascist gauchos. The Führermuseum was Adolf Hitler's grand plan to create a gigantic building complex in the Austrian city of Linz, near his birthplace, as a centerpiece of
I was going to say, why Linz? But immediately, it's his birthplace.
the new Reich. It was intended as the greatest
I mean, he's called the Austrian painter for a reason.
cultural hub in Europe, dwarfing Paris's
Fascinating.
Louvre, featuring an art museum, library, opera house, and theater in one.
Bro still had that art in him. That's crazy. When did he come up with this plan, though? Again, I kind of just wish there were dates. Maybe we don't know, because obviously Adolf lived for a minute. I think he was like, what? I think he died at 45 or something like that. When was he coming up with this plan? When he was in jail in the 20s, or when he took power in the early 30s, or when he was crazy in the 40s? But anyways, whenever he came up with this plan, maybe it was still early, maybe it was still in the 20s when he was in prison, but he clearly still had that art bro in him. He was trying to, he was gonna put up his own paintings and force everyone to be like, this is the new Pablo Picasso. Well, at the time he was still around. Pablo Picasso was still around. I don't know. The new Leonardo da Vinci. This is better. It's kind of funny to think, if it's not even funny, but it's kind of funny to think him forcing the world to be like, yeah, my paintings are the best, and we're gonna put them here at this massive German museum that I just built.
One building. The museum area was to house an
Imagine after he wins World War II and takes over all of Europe, he kind of like goes back to painting, kind of like George Bush did. President George Bush, there's all these like videos of him painting after his presidency. I don't think maybe he wouldn't have time to go back to painting, to be honest. He'd probably be dealing with a whole lot, so I don't know if he'd have much time to paint anymore. But kind of funny if after the conflict was over, he started painting for his little museum project.
extensive collection of artworks looted, confiscated, or purchased across
From the
occupied
French.
Europe. The art collection
I mean, not always from just the French, but he was probably going to take a lot from the Louvre.
would be built around Hitler's preference for the 19th century German romantic and
He still had it in him, bro. Like, he's like this, I don't even know how to describe him. That's so funny, though. Like, the way he viewed art was the best. It's almost like that was his trigger. Him literally getting rejected from art school, like, just did something to the guy. And he had to take over the world just because of it. Man, do not reject painters, Austrian painters from art school.
realist paintings, rejecting modern art, which he vilified as degenerate and Bolshevik.
That's so funny. There's still people that legitimately think that to this day, which is kind of funny. Bro, this kind of goes, there's some artists out there absolutely nuts. I mean, I guess that's always been the case. Artists being, just losing their marbles. That's all this guy is, though. So artist lost his marbles. But that goes, anecdotally, I have met a lot of artists that are absolutely wild.
The city of Linz was to be transformed into a cultural capital that would eclipse Vienna, which Hitler despised for its modernist tendencies and Jewish influence. He envisioned
that's
the
why.
city as the new heart of German culture, filled with neoclassical architecture, all designed to project the ideological values of the Nazi regime. Linz should become the most beautiful city on the Danube
I love this beautiful country city. This is literally a country city that's looking beautiful.
and an industrial and trading hub. Its development realized through forced labor and concentration camps such as Mauthausen nearby. Hitler
Damn.
invested enormous personal interest in this project, sketching building layouts himself and constantly discussing its details.
It's so annoying. Bro, shut up. I don't care about your fanfic about your giant German museum. That shit sucks.
Though the museum was never constructed, thousands of artworks destined for it were already collected and stored, initially in Munich and later hidden in the salt mine at Althaussee.
Bro is such a loser. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. Bro is a loser. Bro, let it go. Maybe if he wasn't so focused on this, Germany would have actually gotten a dub in World War II. Let it go. You got rejected back in the day. Let it go.
Later captured by the Allies.
That's so
The Nazi
funny.
television propaganda network. Hitler's regime dreamed
Interesting.
of a
Remember, I mean, this looks like an Orwellian eye here, but this is before George Orwell's 1984 was published.
dystopian TV empire, the Deutscher Fernsehrundfunk, to control minds across the Greater Germanic Reich. Launched in 1935 as the world's first regular TV service in Berlin, the Nazis planned to blanket Germany with giant 2-meter-wide wooden TV screens in town squares, laundries, beer halls, and factories, broadcasting propaganda 24/7.
Sounds like, I'm sorry, it kind of sounds like China to me, but also every nation uses their own propaganda, not gonna lie, but just blasting it out of a TV. U.S., to be fair, did that too, but they did it, I feel like, in a more subtle way. This one looks really obvious.
Programs included Aryan family shows like Family Chronicles, An Evening with Hans and Gelly.
Bro! He got the names down and everything? Did he come up with this?
Live Nazi rallies and even executions to terrify dissenters.
Okay, well that's a new one. I can't say we did that.
The network aimed to replace radio with a communal TV tower in every village. Engineers sketched mobile TV vans to beam signals into rural areas, and Himmler pushed for loyalty tests, where viewers had to report on neighbors who didn't clap for broadcasts.
Oh man, wait, this is like this is like North Korea. I mean, literally they say that the first person, I don't know how true that is, but in North Korea apparently the first person that stops clapping for Kim Jong-un or something like that gets taken away to a gulag, so you just don't want to stop clapping. I don't know how true that is, but kind of weird to see how many nations ended up still kind of employing this strategy. I mean, even the US to an extent did something similar, but definitely like a modern China and the USSR, like certain things that he's saying, it's like, oh wow, a lot of current nations still ended up doing something like this, something
Limited
similar.
broadcasts started in 1935, but the grand plan for a totalitarian TV empire never materialized.
TV empire.
The Madagascar Plan.
Here we go. There's the plan.
Before the final solution, the Madagascar
It's before they decided to do that.
Plan was a scheme to deport the entire Jewish population of Europe to the island of Madagascar.
Which was French, by the way. I mean, I guess I get it if they took over Paris at that time. Then it's like, okay, well, we could, this island, this massive island off the coast of Africa isn't being administered, essentially. We could just go over there and take it.
In 1940 by Franz Rademacher.
Oh, 1940. Did they already take? Yeah, they might have already taken Paris by then.
And supported by Hitler. This plan imagined relocating 1 million Jews per year over 4 years, with the SS ruling the island as an open-air prison.
Wow.
Madagascar, remote and underdeveloped, was chosen precisely because of its perceived harshness. The deportees were
crazy. I mean, dang. I feel like would I rather be on Madagascar or Australia? I mean, the British did it. The British sent their prisoners to the outback. How do we know that Adolf wasn't just copying that plan? I don't know much about Madagascar. I can imagine there's a ton of diseases. It's probably hot and humid, but it's still green. I feel like I want to say I'd rather be sent to Madagascar than Australia. Sorry for the Aussies. I'm just saying, I don't think I could survive in the outback. I don't think I'd be able to survive literally one day. At least I'll be able to survive for maybe more than one day before I get like some sort of crazy disease from like the mosquitoes or something from Madagascar.
Were not meant to thrive, and many were expected to die from exposure, disease, or starvation. Adolf Eichmann outlined a process of forced resettlement, seizing Jewish assets to fund the plan, and the establishment.
Oh, you take their money and that's how you force them. That pays their way to go to Madagascar.
Of a new Jewish territory under strict German oversight. The plan imagined limited Jewish self-governance, but all under the...
Yeah, I feel like when people think about the Madagascar plan that the Germans came up with here, they think of it like, oh, the Germans were going to make their own version of what Israel is today. It would just exist on Madagascar. No. It was still to get rid of them, and it wasn't going to be like a functional state. It was literally just to get rid of them. And have them die.
Shadow of SS authority, with German naval and air bases securing dominance over the island. After defeating Britain, the Nazis wanted to use the British fleet for transport. By late 1941, the plan was abandoned in favor of systematic genocide in Eastern Europe. Enhanced breeding programs.
I'm kind of glad that we're not talking about the Mediterranean project, because I've just heard it too much. I think we all have. But yeah, that was the one I was waiting for, and I was kind of dreading it because we've heard it all the time, and I thought it was going to be the last one. Luckily, it's not. Yeah, they're going to dam the whole Mediterranean, and it was supposed to provide all this energy and, reclaim lands and stuff like that. Yeah.
Central to Nazi Germany's long-term vision of global domination were expansive pro-natalist programs to boost the birth rate of so-called Aryan Germans.
That's so funny because earlier in the video, I mentioned the birth control pill, the anti-baby pillin'. So he did intend to force the Germans to have more babies, apparently. So there's no way in a world where the birth control pill does become invented, he must outlaw it. I would assume, I think, that he would outlaw it.
Aiming to populate not only the existing Reich, but also the newly conquered Eastern...
Well, I'm glad he thought about it. I mean, that sounds weird to say I'm glad he thought about it, but I felt like that was a big missing part of his plan. Like, you're going to exterminate all these people in Eastern Europe, and you just expect Germans to just repopulate it? Do you know how long that's going to take? It's going to take generations. But okay, at least he had a plan to, like, force people to have more babies, I guess.
Territories. According to Himmler, the ultimate goal was to create a racially homogeneous German population of 200 million.
That's a lot for the Germans at this time. They weren't close to 200 million.
To support this vision, the Nazis institutionalized the Lebensborn program, initially created in 1935, which provided maternity homes and financial incentives to racially valuable women who agreed.
Crazy! Financial incentives to racially valuable women. Holy crap. I was about to say, like, this is going to be... I was excited to see what he was going to talk about here because so many nations are literally dealing with this problem right now. And is there going to be something that... a policy that maybe he came up with that people are employing right now? I don't think so. I mean, there's definitely financial incentive right now. Countries are trying to financially incentivize their citizens to have babies, but not to the racially valuable ones, I don't think. I mean, Putin literally said not that long ago that Russian women need to have babies with Russian men. Actually, maybe Russia could be employing this strategy. I'm not sure if he's giving financial benefits to it.
Maternity homes and program, initially created in 1935, which provided maternity homes and financial incentives to racially valuable women who agreed to bear children for the Reich, often outside of marriage. These women were
outside of marriage
encouraged to partner with SS officers or other racially screened men. Over time, Lebensborn became involved not only in encouraging German births, but also in kidnapping and Germanization of racially suitable children from occupied countries. Public honors like the Gold...
Wait, didn't the Ottomans do that? I think the Ottomans did something similar to that.
Gold Honor Cross of the German Mother were awarded to women who bore 8 or more children.
Damn! Oh, I did hear about that. Yeah.
Motherhood was idealized as a women's highest calling in service of the folk. The program was planned to be expanded even further across newly Germanized regions. Martin Bormann and Himmler also planned reforms to boost population growth by allowing war heroes to legally marry additional wives.
Bro! I mean, I guess... Dude, this is literally Handmaid's Tale, I guess. I mean, not real. It's kind of like that. I mean, I was gonna say, like, are the women just gonna be down for this? But then again, we're talking World War II Germany here, Drew. They don't have a choice. That's literally... So we're basically, or they are basically forcing slavery to all the women. That's kind of what it sounds like. I mean, I don't know. 8 babies? How much financial incentive can I get for 8 babies? I better be a billionaire. Wow, fantastic video there. I love that ending. I've heard about some of that stuff, but not all of it. How would you find the racially pure ones? I mean, I guess you just go around knocking on doors and be like, hey, do you want to make some extra cash? We got this German officer right here. What a mess. I feel like there's a massive flaw. First of all, there's massive flaws in all of these plans, but especially the last one, considering it's such a hot topic nowadays. But that video was by Professor Stein. I absolutely love that video, and I love this icon as well. Please go subscribe. Thank you to my patrons this month. Drew seems like the kind of guy who never loses the remote. Drew's Argentinian Trust Fund, Rip Grandpa. Drew Supremacy League, Alexander the Terrible, Carmel S, Connor Pavlik, Douche Baggins, Frederick Tiblin, King, Bear Hayes, Luxembourg Lover, Miglu, The Goat, Nolan, Lord Tyrol, and Tambrin.